Bismihi Subhanahu. My dear loyal brothers, firstly, the time has come to relate to you a both strange and sad and subtle story from my life, to describe my enemies' slanders, which are both vile and with which no Satan even could deceive anyone, and to show that absolutely no weapon remains to them to utilize against the Risale-i Nur. It is like this. It is well known by those who are familiar with the story of my life that 55 years ago, when I was in my 20s, I stayed for 2 years in the residence of the governor of Bitlis, Ömer Pasha, on his insistence and because of his extreme respect for learning. He had 6 daughters. 3 of them were small and 3 of them were older. Although I stayed in the same house as them for 2 years, I could not tell the 3 older ones apart. I paid them so little attention, how could I have done? Another scholar came and stayed together with me as a guest, and within 2 days he knew them and could tell them one from the other. They were all perplexed at my attitude and asked me, "Why don't you look at them?" I replied, "Preserving the dignity of learning does not allow me to look at them." Also, 40 years ago, on the day of the Kağıthane fair in Istanbul, and the 2 sides of the Golden Horn from the bridge as far as Kağıthane were lined with thousands of unveiled Greek, Armenian, and Istanbul women and girls, I boarded a rowing boat with the late Deputy Mullah Seyyid Taha and the Deputy Hacı İlyas, and we passed by all those women. I was not aware of it, but Mullah Taha and Hacı İlyas had decided to test me, and they observed me in turn. At the end of the hour-long trip, they confessed what they had done and said, "We are astonished at your behavior. You didn't look at them at all." I replied, "Unnecessary, fleeting, sinful pleasures yield only pains, so I have no desire for them. Also, all those who have been companions to me know that throughout my life I have avoided accepting gifts and becoming beholden to people and accepting their charity and benefactions. Also, it has become absolutely clear in the 2 court cases in the course of my 20 years of torturous captivity that in order to defend the honor and benefits of the Risale-i Nur and its services to belief and the Qur'an, I have evinced no curiosity about the material, social, and political matters of this world, and I have renounced all their pleasures, and that I attach not the slightest importance to any of the threats of our malicious enemies, including the gallows. While this has been my principle in life for 75 years, a man who occupies an official position calumniated me in a way that devils even could not dream up in order to denigrate the extraordinary value of the Risale-i Nur. He said, he is being visited at night by prostitutes and other evildoers with trays of baklava. But my door is locked on both the inside and the outside at night, and on the orders of that wretch a watchman was posted at the door till the morning. And my neighbors here and all my friends know that I receive no one at all from after the late evening prayer until the morning. An idiotic fool, or an ass, or even a Satan could not utter such slander. The man understood this and gave up such schemes and left here and went elsewhere to hell. With this scheme, which he devised, not in his official capacity, in order to smear the Nurjus, not me, he was the cause of this new incident and intended to blacken the student's reputation. But in wondrous fashion, divine protection, preservation, and providence confounded it. I am not exonerating my own soul with these explanations. I want to say rather that the sacred service for belief induced my soul to give up all its desires, and that the spiritual pleasures in that service suffice it. I am making clear to the Nurjus need for caution and vigilance. Secondly, I am sending to you my private scribe who is experienced and capable with the duplicating machines. I write only with difficulty and will henceforth write to you briefly. So don't be offended. Fourthly, I have this minute received the fine letter of Mehmet Feyzi, the Hüsrev of Kastamonu, containing the good news of the Risale-i Nur's conquests and his congratulations. And with all my life and spirit, I congratulate foremost that valuable brother of ours, and Hilmi, Emin, and the Beş Kardeşs, and our Nursi sisters, the Ulviyes, Zehras, and Lütfiyes, on both the 10 nights and the festival. Also, we are sending attached the letters of both Hulusi and Feyzi. Said Nursi. My dear loyal brothers, firstly, we congratulate both all the Nursis on their holy festival and the Nur students who are making the Hajj and the supporters of the Risale-i Nur who are also on the Hajj. The festival brings us good news, for it is celebrating the preliminaries of the Islamic world's great festival of the coming together in unity as Islamic states of such large countries in the Islamic world as India and Arabia, which have for a long time past lost their independence and been in subjection, an Islamic state in India with its population of 100 million, and an Islamic state in Java with its population of more than 50 million, and 4 or 5 governments in Arabia coming together in Arab unity as united republics and forming Islamic unity. Secondly, according to what Refet Bey and Mustafa Oruç have written in Istanbul over the portal of the splendid building that served as the Ministry of War and headquarters of the army, from which for years the Army of Islam was commanded and was subsequently handed over to the university, are inscribed in the Qur'anic script the meaningful verses, "Verily, we have granted thee a manifest victory, and that God may help thee with powerful help." These verses were later covered with marble slabs, and their lights were concealed. Now, as an example of the Qur'anic script once again being permitted, the marble slabs have been removed, which assists the objectives the Risale-i Nur follows and is a sign that in the future the university will be a Nur school. And in a passage the Denizli Nurcu Ahmets have taken from one of the works of Bismarck, who was one of the 19th century's most eminent social philosophers and a great genius, he says, "I have studied the Qur'an from every angle, and I have seen wisdom in every one of its words. It is unequaled, and for the government of humankind there is no work to match it." And addressing the Prophet, upon whom be blessings and peace, he says, "O Muhammad, I am indeed sad that I am not your contemporary. Only once has humanity seen a power as outstanding as yours. I therefore bow in reverence in your presence." Bismarck put his signature to this. He so belittled the corrupted, abrogated revealed scriptures in the piece he wrote, those sentences should not have been written. I indicated this too. The fact that Bismarck was the most brilliant and eminent philosopher of the 19th century and one of its most illustrious and powerful figures in political and social life, and the Islamic world is now winning its independence to an extent, and foreign governments are searching for the Qur'anic truths, and there is a powerful current favoring the Qur'an in the West and Northwest, and just like Bismarck, Mr. Carlyle, America's most eminent and famous philosopher, has said categorically that none of the scriptures can compare with the Qur'an, and that what it says is true, so they should listen to it, and the Risale-i Nur is progressing and making conquests. These are all auspicious signs that many Bismarcks and Carlyles will appear in Europe and America. We present this to you as a festival gift and send attached the piece written by Bismarck. Said Nursi. My dear loyal brothers, secondly, the Risale-i Nur's most powerful force in the face of so many opponents is sincerity, and just as it can be made the tool of nothing in the world, so it cannot be concerned with any currents based on feelings of partisanship, particularly currents connected to politics. For partisanship destroys sincerity and distorts the truth. In fact, the reason I have given up politics these last 30 years is this: because of his feelings of bias towards the political current he supported, A revered scholar of religion insulted another prominent, sound scholar to the extent of calling him a depraved sinner because he held opposing views, while at the same time he praised and applauded a famous and aggressive dissembler who agreed with his ideas. It caused me to shudder to the very depths of my being, thinking when involvement in politics is combined with feelings of bias, it gives rise to quite extraordinary mistakes. I declared, I seek refuge with God from a Satan and from politics, and from that time I gave up politics. In consequence of that state of mind, brothers like yourself, know that for the last 25 years, I have neither read a newspaper, nor listened to one being read, nor have I been curious. And for the past 10 years, I have evinced no interest or curiosity in the world war, nor have I known about it. You know too that, apart from my court defenses, in the 22 years of this distressing captivity, so as to avoid having any contact with politics and partisanship and to prevent marring the sincerity of the Risale-i Nur, I have never applied to the government for my own well-being. You also know that, as I wrote and told you while in prison, if those who condemn me to death and torment and maltreat me have their belief through the Risale-i Nur, bear witness that I forgive them. And so that no harm should come to sincerity due to feelings of bias, I have had nothing to do with the stormy political currents that have emerged from home and abroad these last 2 or 3 years. I have also warned my brothers about them to an extent. Thirdly, you know that I do not accept alms or charity, nor can I be an intermediary for such benefictions. Due to this, I am selling my clothes and other necessities and buying with the money my own books from the brothers who wrote them out. In this way, no worldly benefits will impair the Risale-i Nur's sincerity, and it will be an exemplary lesson for our other brothers so that they will avoid making it the tool of anything. Fourthly, the Risale-i Nur suffices for its true students. They should be content with it and not set their sights on other honors or benefits, material or spiritual. Also, so as not to make people hostile and resentful towards the Risale-i Nur, one should not enter into arguments, disputes, or biased discussions on religious questions that are going to upset them. In fact, I had a premonition at exactly the same time that our brother Mustafa Oruç was disputing with someone in a fashion contrary to the Risale-i Nur's way, and I felt an intense anger and indignation at him my heart. I felt truly saddened and wanted to demote him from the high rank he had won from the Risale-i Nur. But he was an Abdurrahman for me, so why did I feel such anger towards him? Then he visited me this festival. Thanks be to God, he had heeded a crucial lesson and understood that serious mistake of his. He had confessed to his error at the very time I was angry with him here. God willing, it was atonement for him and he was saved, completely purified. Fifthly, for the past 4 or 5 months, a person has evidently been sending me a newspaper here. I have only just learned that it was being sent to me. My friends here know my habits, and they were scared and did not tell me, since apart from the Risale-i Nur I accept no book or magazine, let alone newspapers, and anyway I don't know a single letter of the new alphabet. Now, someone showed me a journalist's letter who is friendly and from the same region, which contains a 1-page interview with me. They told me that he had been sending a paper to me, but they were frightened to show it to me. So I told them, send that friend many greetings from me. The old Said, who he knew, has changed and cut all ties with this world. He is also ill and cannot write a personal letter to that brother, so he should not be offended. I send greetings to all the friends there, especially brothers like Hafiz Emin and Hafiz Fahreddin, and I again congratulate them on the festival. My dear loyal brothers, endless thanks be to Almighty God. A sign of the Risale-i Nur's acceptance by Mecca and Medina is this. The Denizli hero Hafiz Mustafa obtained from Istanbul the Zulfikar, staff of Moses, and shining lamp that were going to be sent to the Indian ulama, and on the road read them to some people traveling to the Hajj. Then in Medina, they together handed them over to a very famous Kashmiri scholar and to someone who knew Turkish well. The two young Nurju Hajis who had accompanied Hafiz Mustafa and read the Risale-i Nur on the journey, and some other Hajis, brought me this good news, and that the person to whom they had given those collections thought very highly of them and undertook to send them to the center of the Indian ulama, and also that the collections designated for Medina had arrived in good condition, as had those sent to other places. They brought the good news of the Risale-i Nur's spread and acceptance abroad. Said Nursi. My dear loyal brothers, legally they should have taken my statements, but they neglected to do so, so I am now presenting my statement to the collective personality of the judiciary and for the information of the Interior Minister. By reason of your job and duty, you are obliged and compelled to heed a person who has caused no harm to this country and nation these last 40 years, indeed has been most beneficial for them. In short, during the 31st of March incident, with one speech this person induced 8 mutinying regiments to obey their officers, and he saved many of those officers, and with his pamphlet The 6 Steps in the midst of the national movements, he turned the ulama, Shaykhul Islam, and Istanbul away from supporting the foreign occupation forces, and performed courageous services during the First World War that were praised and applauded by the late Enver Pasha, and whom 3 awesome commanders did not dare to touch, although they were angry with him, and before the truth which he had followed, 3 courts of law were confounded and did not have the courage to condemn him, although he could have been legally charged due to the calumnies of coward atheists, and whose treatises have been praised and commended by scholars of religion and science, and who speaks on account of those treatises. I began, truth and right are with us. May Almighty God not compel us to seek our rights by force or in any other way. Amen. These 20 years, hundreds of experiences have shown that divine providence has protected us and saved us from ghastly oppression. We should therefore feel quite certain that it will save us from this new, completely illegal and cruel injustice. We nourish powerful hopes from divine mercy that even if we suffer some minor difficulties, troubles, and harms, we shall receive divine mercy and grace and rewards far greater than the troubles, which will be transformed into another form of the sacred service of saying the wretched believers believe. I declare that the incident in question was illegal in 10 ways. The first, for 2 years the Risale-i Nur was in the possession of the judiciary and was scrutinized and investigated by 3 courts and 3 committees of experts, and was passed around 7 government offices in Ankara, and all the treatises of the Risale-i Nur were unanimously and without objection acquitted together with Said and his 75 friends, with not even a single day's penalty being given, so anyone to tiniest bit fair-minded would know just how contrary to the law it is to again seize them as though they were dangerous documents. The second, accusing him of involvement in politics, detectives smashed the lock on the door of a man who, after his acquittal, has lived for 3.5 years as a recluse and stranger in Emirdağ, with his door locked on both the outside and the inside, who has received only 1 person in 100 to perform his necessary tasks, and has even given up composing works which he had previously done for 20 years, but they could find nothing except a poster with some words about belief. Surely anyone with even a grain of intelligence would understand how contrary to the law this torment was. The third, To raid a man's house as though he were a monstrous politician or political conspirator, although as testified to by 70 witnesses in court, he has neither known about the World War, nor asked about it, or been curious about it, and now the same situation has continued for 10 years, and for 20 years has neither read a newspaper, nor listened to one being read, and for 30 years, exclaiming, "I seek refuge with God from Satan and politics," has fled from politics with all his might, and despite suffering torturous distress has not applied once to the government for his own comfort, so as not to attract attention to himself or interfere in politics, with which law does it accord to raid his retreat and cause unimaginable distress to his spirit while he lies ill? Anyone with an atom's conscience would pity him. The fourth, although a number of judicial authorities were prompted against him due to groundless fears concerning the founding of a Sufi order and political society, and due to the personal grudges of a great leader, he was acquitted of the charges after 6 months of investigations by Eskişehir court and of charges connected with the Risale-i Nur. Only on the pretext of a short part of the Risale-i Nur about the veiling of women, the court imposed a sentence of 6 months on 5 or 10 students out of 100, not as dictated by the law, but at its discretion. They had already been under arrest for 4 months by the time the investigation commenced, that is, they had been held in prison for 1.5 months. Then 10 years later, the court scrutinized all the letters and writings of 20 years, and they remained in prison during the investigations conducted by Ankara and Denizli. Then the courts passed down a unanimous decision for their acquittal regarding the Sufi order and political society and the other pretexts, and they acquitted Said and his friends and returned that book and all the letters to their owners. Footnote: the basis and objective of the Risale-i Nur is certain affirmative belief and the truth of the Qur'an. For this reason, 3 courts acquitted it in regard to Sufism. Also, in 20 years, no one at all has claimed that I have given instruction in Sufism. Anyway, a way that this nation has been bound to for 1,000 years cannot be held to be reprehensible. Moreover, those who respond to certain coward dissemblers who label the reality of Islam Sufism and attack this nation's religion cannot be accused of practicing Sufism. As for the society, it is brotherhood that looks to the hereafter insofar as it is Islamic brotherhood. 3 courts have ruled that it is not a political society. So, to now look on them as a political society and accuse him of being a political intriguer and to incite the officers of the law against them as though they were members of a political society and Sufi order is totally opposed to the law, as anyone who has not lost his humanity would know. The fifth, it is like this. Owing to the compassion which is the basis of the Risale-i Nur's way and has been a guiding principle of my life for 30 years, so that no harm should come to any innocent, I do not vex the criminals who persecute me, let alone curse them. I feel anger at the deprived sinners who oppress me with terrible hatred, indeed irreligious tyrants, yet that compassion prevents me from responding physically or even with curses. For those cruel evildoers have wretched elderly parents or innocent children, lest they suffer any blows, I refrain from annoying them for the sake of those innocents, and sometimes I even forgive them. It is owing to this compassion that just as we have done nothing to infringe public order and security, so too I have advised all our friends to such an extent that some fair-minded police in 3 provinces have admitted that the Nursi students are moral police and preserve public order and security. This fact has been corroborated by the students' lives over 20 years by thousands of witnesses and by no incidents at all being recorded by the police despite there being thousands of students. So, which law would permit the house of that person to be raided as though he were a lawless revolutionary and for unscrupulous men to insult him, and although they were unable to find anything incriminating, to seize his Qur'an and the posters on his wall as though they were dangerous papers, and he was a multiple lawbreaker. The sixth, 30 years ago, that person realized through the grace of God and the efficiency of the Qur'an just how harmful, just how profitless, just how meaningless are fleeting honor and renown in this world, and egotistical self-advancement and love of fame. From that time he has struggled with all his strength, with his evil commanding soul, and has striven, as far as he possibly can be, abnegate himself and renounce egotism, and to act without artificiality and hypocrisy. Although his companions and those who serve him know this, and although contrarily to everyone else, for the past 20 years he has fled with all his strength from the excessively good opinions of people and their regard and praise for his person, which everyone wants for themselves, and from looking on himself as a holder of high spiritual rank, and although he has rejected the favorable opinions of his select brothers and offended them, and in his replies to their letters has rebuffed their praises for him and broken their excessively high opinions, and has shown himself to be bereft of virtue, and has ascribed all virtue to the Risale-i Nur, which is a commentary on the Qur'an, and thus indirectly to the collective personality of the Nursi students, and that he considers himself to be a common servant. And although this proves decisively that he has not tried to make himself liked, and has not wanted this, and has rejected it, and although without his consent some of his friends a long way off evinced an excessively favorable opinion of him, and applauded him and accorded him a high rank, according to which law could he be indicted due to some things a preacher in the region of Kütahya said, and due to a letter bearing my forged signature, although I have never sent a letter to Kütahya, and due to an inflammatory book being found in Balıkesir whose author is unknown, is there any law in the world, any policy, that would permit the smashing of the lock on the door of a wretched, ill, very elderly recluse who is a stranger as though he had committed some crime, and for detectives to search it, but then could find nothing but a book of invocations and some posters? The seventh, what law would permit such an assault on a person who, at this time when there are so many lively internal and external political currents in this country, and the time is ripe to profit from them, that is, to win to his side many high-ranking politicians instead of his few friends, he wrote and warned his friends not to get carried away on any of the political currents, or enter politics, or disturb public order, solely not to interfere in politics, or harm sincerity, or attract the government's attention to himself, or to busy himself with this world. And although the two main currents caused him trouble and difficulties due to his avoidance of them, the former one out of their groundless fears, the new one because he does not assist it, he does not meddle in the world of the worldly at all, but is busy with his life in the next world, and in 22 years has not written a single letter to his own brother in his home region and the village of Nursi, and in 20 years has not written 10 letters to his friends in those provinces. So, which law would permit such harassment of so wretched a man and his preoccupation with the hereafter? Although the law allowing freedom of speech and ideas does not intervene in the dissemination of the books of the irreligious and the communist publications, which are most damaging to this country, nation, and morality, would any law, any conscience, any fair-mindedness permit the seizure as though they were dangerous documents of such parts of the Risale-i Nur as Zulfikar and the Staff of Moses, which contain nothing indictable, as has been proved by 3 courts, and for 20 years has been striving to hold together society for this nation and country, and to maintain its morality and security, and to restore the Islamic world's brotherhood and friendship for this nation, which is its true source of support, and to strengthen it effectively, and the value of which was recognized by the scholars of the Directorate of Religious Affairs on their scrutinizing them for 3 months on the orders of the Interior Minister, although their intention had been to find fault with it. What law and conscience would permit their being handed over to the courts? The 8th, this person has not departed for his native region, where he has thousands of relations and friends, although he has been given his complete freedom. After 20 years of distressing exile without cause, he has preferred to remain alone and in exile so that he should have no contact with this world and the life of society and politics. He has achieved the rewards of performing the prayers in congregation in the mosque and preferred to perform them alone in his room. That is, his state of mind causes him to shrink from the people's esteem, and as testified to by his life of 20 years and affirmed by hundreds of thousands of valuable Turkish people, prefers one religious and pious Turk to numerous negligent Kurds. In fact, has proved in court that he would not change his sincere Turkish brothers, whose belief is as powerful as that of Hafiz Ali, for hundreds of Kurds, and if not obliged to, does not meet with people or go to the mosque so as not to be acclaimed and be treated with reverence, and for 40 years has striven with all his strength and his works for the brotherhood of Islam and to strengthen love between Muslims, and who does not act negatively towards fierce enemies and does not even busy himself with them or curse them, and who loves the Turkish nation since it is the Qur'an's standard bearer and has been praised by the Qur'an and has passed his life among them. Which law would permit such a person to be insulted in official lease, saying, "He is a Kurd, you are Turks, he is a Shafi, you are Hanifis," just for propaganda and to scare his friends and to make the people avoid him, and permit a brimmed hat to be forced on the head of that recluse, although in 22 years and 2 courts he has not been compelled to change his dress, and the peaked cap for soldiers even has been partially modified. The 9th. This is very important and very powerful, but I am remaining silent since it touches on politics. Footnote: the fact that there used to be Christians and Jews in Islamic governments and Muslims in Christian and Zoroastrian governments shows that the government cannot take measures against opponents who do not breach public security. Also, possibilities are not indictable, for anyone can commit murder. If this were the case, everyone would have to be sent to court. The 10th. This was an assault that would be permitted by no law, and in which there were no benefits. It was covered by no law and resulted from making mountains out of a molehill due to unfounded suspicions. So, keeping silent so as not to look to politics as is demanded by our way, we merely say in the face of such treatment that was illegal in 10 respects. God suffices us, and He is the best disposer of affairs. Said Nursi.